Welcome back, everyone, to the 5 p.m. podcast. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm joined by the insightful Tina.
Hey, Dan. And hello to all our listeners. Ready for another deep dive into the world of politics?
I am, and this one's a doozy. We're talking about Chrystia Freeland, who is running for the leadership of the Liberal Party in Canada, and she's made a, let's say, bold times proposal.
Bold is one word for it. She's proposing a 100% tariff on Tesla vehicles imported into Canada. Now, if that sounds like a lot, that's because it is.
It is. It's not your everyday run-of-the-mill tariff. This is, from my point, a pretty targeted move. Now, from what I am reading, this is in response to potential tariffs the U.S. might impose under, the previous administration.
Right, the Trump administration. So it's kind of a tit-for-tat situation, but with electric vehicles?
Exactly. And it's not just any industry. She specifically mentioned targeting American stakeholders who matter to the White House, even naming dairy farmers in Wisconsin. It's strategic, to say the least.
It's like she's saying, you mess with our trade, we'll mess with yours. But aiming right at sectors that could influence U.S. policy. It's a political chess move, really.
Chess is a good analogy. Because, think about it, tariffs are usually much lower. We're talking under 30% in many cases. A 100% tariff. That essentially doubles the price of a Tesla in Canada.
Which, let's be honest, would make them pretty unaffordable for most people. I mean, who's going to pay double for a car, even an electric one?
It raises a big question about the impact on consumers. On one hand, it's about protecting Canadian industries. But on the other, it limits consumer choice and could slow down the adoption of electric vehicles, which is kind of a big deal right now.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? Protecting your economy versus potentially harming your own citizens with higher prices and fewer options. And it makes you wonder, is this the most effective way to retaliate?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've seen other trade disputes in the past. Remember that situation where Mexico agreed to deploy troops to its border in exchange for the U.S. pausing tariffs? That was back in 2019, if my memory is correct.
I do remember that. It shows that these kinds of trade tensions can lead to negotiations, but they can also escalate quickly. It's a bit of a gamble, really.
It is a gamble. And Freeland, well, she's known for being, let's say, assertive in trade negotiations. This proposal definitely fits that pattern.
It's a clear signal to the U.S. that Canada is not backing down. It's bold, it's potentially risky, but it certainly grabs attention.
And it makes you wonder about the bigger picture, right? How does this play into Canada's overall relationship with the U.S., especially if Freeland does become Prime Minister?
It's like, this could either lead to a breakthrough in trade negotiations, or it could make things even more tense. It will depend on how U.S. going to take this.
And that's really what we'll be watching. This isn't just about Tesla, or even just about tariffs. It's about the future of Canada-U.S. relations, and how countries navigate these kinds of trade disputes in a, shall we say, times complicated, times global landscape.
Exactly. It's a story with many layers, and we'll be sure to keep following it as it develops. Thanks for breaking it down, Dan.
My pleasure, Tina. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on the 5 p.m. podcast. We'll be back next week with more insights into the world of politics.